For centuries, the Alps stood as an impenetrable fortress of stone, dividing the heart of Europe. To cross them, humanity either climbed over or went around. But to build the ultimate transport corridor, engineers decided to do the impossible: go straight to the base. 57 kilometers. Buried beneath 2,300 meters of crushing rock. They deployed the largest machines ever built to carve the longest deep-earth tunnel in history. But as they ground deeper into the dark, the mountain fought back. Temperatures spiked to lethal levels, and they struck a hidden dead zone where solid granite turned into a collapsing, watery nightmare. What happens when human precision collides with the chaotic, crushing forces of the deep earth? For generations, the Alps were not just a mountain range. They were a massive geological wall. A natural barricade of jagged rock and permanent winter that choked the flow of trade across Europe. To move goods from northern to southern Europe, millions of trucks were forced onto winding, treacherous alpine passes. It was slow. It was dangerous. And it was destroying the fragile mountain ecosystem. Engineers knew the old tunnels were no longer enough. Those tunnels climbed high into the mountains before entering the rock, meaning trains still had to fight gravity. To create the ultimate high-speed corridor, they proposed a radically different idea. A base tunnel. They would not climb. They would not go around. They would draw a perfectly flat line straight through the base of the Alps. But drawing the line on a map is easy. Executing it meant carving a 57-kilometer hole through the heart of the earth. It meant diving deeper than any tunnel in history, up to 2,300 meters beneath the surface. At that depth, the mountain is not just heavy. It is alive. It moves, it breathes, and it crushes. To survive the descent, the engineers could not rely on traditional explosives alone. They needed to build a new kind of mechanical predator. A machine capable of eating mountains from the inside out. You cannot dig a 57-kilometer hole with dynamite and shovels. You need a monster. Enter the tunnel boring machines, or TBMs. The engineers deployed 4 of these mechanical leviathans to attack the mountain from different directions. These were not just drills. They were rolling, subterranean factories. Each TBM was over 400 meters long and weighed roughly 3,000 tons. At the front, a massive rotating cutter head, studded with hardened steel discs, ground the ancient alpine granite into dust. As the machine chewed forward, it simultaneously cleared the debris and installed the massive concrete lining behind it. It was a flawless system. The scale of the excavation was almost incomprehensible. By the end of the project, these steel worms would devour 28 million tons of solid rock. That is enough material to rebuild the Great Pyramid of Giza 5 times over. But a machine is only as strong as the rock it cuts. The Alps are not made of uniform stone. They are a chaotic mosaic of tectonic collision. Hard granite suddenly gives way to brittle quartz. The TBMs were making steady progress. The plan seemed to be working. But as they pushed past the first few kilometers, the sensors began to register an alarming shift in the environment. The air was getting thick. The metal of the machines was growing hot to the touch. The deeper they went, the more the mountain began to react. At 2,300 meters below the peaks, the rules of surface physics no longer apply. Here, the sheer weight of the rock above creates crushing pressure. But pressure was not the immediate threat. It was the heat. Because of the extreme depth and the natural geothermal gradient of the Earth. the temperature of the rock walls spiked to an agonizing 46 degrees Celsius. Over 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Without intervention, the air inside the tunnel would literally cook the crew and melt the hydraulic seals of the machines. To survive this deep earth inferno, engineers had to pump massive amounts of refrigerated air from the surface, creating an artificial climate deep inside the rock. But cooling the air did not stop the mountain from fighting back. Under immense pressure, the rock became highly stressed. Workers faced the constant, terrifying threat of rock bursts, sudden, explosive ejections of stone that sounded like artillery fire. The mountain was actively trying to close the wound the humans were cutting into it. The engineers adapted. They reinforced the walls with flexible steel arches, allowing the mountain to squeeze the tunnel slightly without shattering the concrete. They had conquered the heat and stabilized the pressure. But the worst was yet to come. Deep inside the geological surveys, a shadow loomed over the entire project. A hidden layer of the mountain that had the potential to swallow the machines whole. Every engineer on the Megaproject lived in fear of one phrase: the Piora Anomaly. Surface geological testing had revealed the terrifying zone deep inside the mountain. Instead of solid, predictable granite, the Piora Anomaly was a geological fault filled with a type of rock called sugary dolomite. It was granular, brittle, and saturated with water under extreme pressure. If a 3,000-ton tunnel boring machine drove blindly into this zone, the results would be catastrophic. The sudden release of pressurized water and loose rock would flood the tunnel, burying the machine, drowning the workers, and effectively ending the multi-billion-dollar project forever. It was a dead zone, and it was waiting for them. As the TBM approached the anomaly, drilling was brought to a dead stop. They could not risk the main tunnel. Instead, they carefully drilled exploratory boreholes directly into the suspected danger zone. What the scientists found changed everything. The anomaly existed, but its lethal, watery center was located higher up in the mountain. Down at the level of the base tunnel, the extreme pressure of the Alps had actually compressed the sugary dolomite into a dry, solid mass. The rock held firm. The nightmare scenario was averted. They pushed through the dead zone. But after 14 years of relentless digging, fighting heat, pressure, and volatile rock, they faced the ultimate test of human precision. Imagine digging two tiny holes from opposite sides of a massive mountain range, aiming for a single, invisible point 57 kilometers away, in absolute darkness. This was the final challenge of the Gotthard Base Tunnel. Underground, GPS is completely useless. Radio signals cannot penetrate the rock. To keep the massive machines aligned, engineers relied on a complex array of high-tech gyroscopes, acoustic sensors, and extreme precision laser targeting. But even with the best technology, the margin for error was terrifying. A miscalculation of a fraction of a degree would mean the tunnels would bypass each other in the dark. Years of work and billions of dollars would be wasted. In October 2010, the two massive tunnels finally converged. The massive cutter head of the TBM smashed through the last remaining wall of rock. Dust filled the cavern. Workers from the north side stepped through the jagged hole to embrace workers from the south. When the engineers measured the final alignment, the results stunned the world. After 57 kilometers of drilling through some of the most hostile geology on Earth, the two tunnels met with a horizontal deviation of just 8 millimeters. Less than a centimeter of error. It was a staggering triumph of human engineering over the chaotic forces of nature. Today, a sleek, aerodynamic train glides into the dark opening of the Gotthard Base Tunnel. Inside the brightly lit cabins, passengers sip coffee, read on their screens, and chat quietly. The ride is impossibly smooth. In just 20 minutes, they will emerge on the other side of the Alps, completing a journey that once took days of perilous climbing. It is silent, efficient, and perfectly safe. But that comfort is an illusion of modern engineering. Behind the pristine curved walls of concrete lies a hostile, suffocating world. A world of 46-degree rock, lethal pressure, and deep earth anomalies. The project took 17 years to complete. It required the removal of 28 million tons of stone. And tragically, it cost the lives of 9 workers, whose names are forever memorialized near the tunnel entrance. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is more than just a transportation corridor. It is a monument to what humanity can achieve when we refuse to go around the obstacles in our path and choose instead to go straight through them. The mountain remains, but it is no longer a barrier. If you were sitting on that train, speeding through the absolute dark, would you ever think about the millions of tons of rock suspended just above your head?